Chapter 6. Here we're looking at turning our percentages into decimals and fractions. So to turn this into a fraction, my decimal's actually right here. To get rid of this, I move it over 2 places. So 10% as a decimal equivalent is 1/10. As a fraction equivalent, it's 1/10. 65%. Again, my decimal is right here. To get rid of the percent sign, I move the decimal 2 places, which becomes 65 hundredths. As a fractional equivalent, 65 over 100, which reduces to 13 over 20. When we have 3.5%, to get rid of this, we move our decimal 2 places, so it's actually 35 thousandths. And once I make it into a fraction, you don't see a decimal here. So we take the decimal out as we put it over our 100 or 1,000 or tens. And now I'm going to reduce this to 7 over 5 goes into 35 7 times, 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. 18%, move the decimal 2 places. That's read 18 hundredths. And that can be reduced. 2 goes into both of them. %. I can just write as 0.6. I don't need the 0 here, since there's no digit after that. This is the significant digit. So this would be written as a fraction of 6/10, because that's how I read this. And then we can reduce that to 3/5. F is 1 1/2%. I'm going to change that to 1.5% written out in decimal form. And then I'm going to move my decimal 2 places. And when I move my decimal 2 places, I no longer have the percent sign. This is read as 15 thousandths. And I reduce that. 5 goes into both. So 5 goes into 15 3 times. And 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. 5%. As a decimal is 5 100ths. 5 over 100 as a fraction, and I can reduce that. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 120 times. Now in example 2, we're given the decimal, and we're turning that into a fraction and a percent. So as a fraction, this is going to be 5 over 100, because the 5 is in the hundredths place. And that reduces, like we saw up here, to 1 over 20. And again, that would be 5%. And B, we have 6/10. Just like up here. It is 60%, and it is 3/5. Now here we have more than 100%. This is actually 1 1/10. If I move the decimal 2 places, I get 110%. When I take this and I move the decimal 2 places to the right, I get 37.5%, or I get as a fraction 375 over 1,000, which reduces if I divide it by 5, I get 75 over 200, and I can reduce that both by 25, and I get so I move the decimal 2 places, I get 1%. The fractional equivalent is 1 over 100. One-tenth is 10%. In fraction form, it's 1 over 10. 8/10 is 80%. We move the decimal 2 places, and we have 8 over 10, which reduces to 4 over 5. In example 3, we're looking at 20 children, and we want 100% of that. 100% in decimal form is 1. So we're taking 20 times 1, which is 20 children. In part B, we're looking at 10%. So 10% of 20 children, if you just move the decimal 1 place, you get 2 children, which is your answer. You could also take 1/10 times 20 and get 0, 2, 1 decimal point, 2 children. C, how about 20%? I'm just going to take my 10% and double it. So I'm going to get 4 children. I could take my decimal of 20% times my 20 children and get 4 children, same thing. And D, I'm looking for 15%, so I know I'm going right in the middle between 2 children and 4 children, which is 3 children. So I have 20 children times 15. That would give me 30. Bring down this 0. Count over 1, 2 places, and I get 3. (7A), we're looking at 0.2%, which is when I take to get rid of the percentage symbol, I have to move the decimal 2 places, and that's my decimal equivalent. My fractional equivalent would be 2 over 1,000, which reduces to 1 over 500. In example 8, we have 22 over 25. Now, if we can get this bottom number here to be 100, then the numerator is our percent. So if I multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 4, I get 88 over 100. And that would be 88%. if I was not so lucky and I could not do that, I would just divide so 20, I have to, oh, there's no decimal, oh, 25 goes into 220 8 times. So my answer is 88%, same as I got the other way. So I will do 9 through. In example 9, we have 160 people out of a total of 770. So we're going to write it as a percent and a fraction. So here's our fraction. We can reduce that to 16 over 77. We can just reduce by 10. Now when I'm dividing, $77 goes into 160. I'm going to say twice. Which is 154. I subtract it from 160 and I get a 6. 77 is greater than 6, so that 2 is correct. I bring down my 0. 77 does not divide into 60, so I have to put my 0 up here. I bring down another 0. 77 goes into 607 times. So it's approximately 21%. I round this to a 21 hundredths and I change it to my percent. So in example 10, I'm setting it up here as the part over whole, which I don't care for this method. People make a lot of mistakes using this method, not in the setup but in the answer. When you get your answer, it is already in a percent. You don't have to do anything else with it. So here I'm going to do my cross product and I get 200x equals 2000. Divide by my coefficient of x. Now I have 20 over 2, which that equals 10, and that's already a percent. So in number 11, my setup would be part over whole equals the percent over 100. We do our cross product. Divide by the coefficient of x. And that's what I get. Examples 12 through 19 will be in part 2.